The great hall stretched so far that could barely see the other end. Thousands of alien delegates filled the space, their bodies strange and wonderful. Some floated in tanks of colored liquid. Others stood on multiple legs or hovered in the air. The Galactic Defense Summit happened only once every 4 years, and this was Earth's first time attending. Felt sweat on his palms as he stood backstage. Next to him, checked their presentation for the 100th time. She was the person he knew, but even she looked nervous. Their military advisor stood nearby with his arms crossed. "They're going to laugh at us," whispered. "Let them," said quietly. "It doesn't matter." For 3 days, they had watched other civilizations show off their weapons. The Empire brought ships so large they could crack planets in half. The Collective had 10,000 robot warships that could think and fight on their own. The Supremacy showed shields that could protect an entire star system. Each presentation took hours. Each one made Earth look smaller and weaker. Humans had only joined the galactic community 80 years ago. They were the members, the youngest, the least impressive. Everyone knew it. "Earth delegation, you're next," a voice announced through a speaker. Picked up the small case and walked onto the stage. The lights were bright. He could feel thousands of eyes watching him. Some of those eyes weren't even eyes, but he felt them all the same. He placed the case on the presentation table and opened it. Inside, sitting on simple foam padding, was a sphere about the size of a basketball. It didn't glow. It didn't hum. It just sat there, looking like a metal ball someone might use for decoration. "Honored delegates," began, his voice carried across the hall by invisible technology. "Earth is proud to present our contribution to galactic defense. We call it the Seed." He heard the first laugh almost immediately. It came from the section, a deep booming sound. More laughter followed. Continued as if he hadn't heard. "The Seed is composed of self-replicating nanomachines. Its purpose is adaptive environmental modification." "Environmental modification," a voice called out from the crowd. "This is a weapons summit, not a gardening convention." More laughter. Saw's face turned red with anger behind him. The ambassador, a creature named who stood 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like blue metal, rose from his seat. "Forgive me," said, his voice dripping with fake politeness. "But is this truly what Earth considers a weapon, a ball that modifies environments?" "The Seed is capable of," started. "Perhaps humans don't understand what warfare means at our scale," interrupted. "We crack planets, we command fleets of thousands, we reshape star systems, and you bring us this," he gestured at the sphere with one of his 4 hands, "a child's toy." The High Commander, a being made of crystalline structures that sparkled under the lights, spoke next. "I recommend we move on. Earth clearly needs more time to understand galactic-level threats. Their naivety is almost charming." The summit director, a floating jellyfish-like creature, consulted with her advisors. "Earth delegation, I'm afraid we're running behind schedule. We can give you 10 more minutes instead of your allotted hour. Please summarize quickly." Felt the dismissal like a physical blow. An hour cut to 10 minutes. He looked at his notes, at the detailed explanation of how the nanomachines worked, how they could replicate and adapt and transform matter at the molecular level. None of it would matter now. "The Seed uses advanced replication technology too." Yes, we understand," said, waving a hand. "It's very clever for a young species. Perhaps in a few thousand years you'll catch up to the rest of us. Next presentation, please." Stood there for a moment. He wanted to argue. He wanted to make them listen, but touched his arm and he saw the look in her eyes. "Not yet," that look said. He bowed slightly, picked up the case with the Seed inside and walked off the stage. The applause was polite but brief. He heard delegates already chatting amongst themselves, dismissing Earth completely. Backstage, calm broke. "Why didn't you fight back?" she demanded. "Why didn't you make them listen? We worked 5 years on this. 5 years and they gave us 10 minutes." They weren't going to listen no matter what I said, replied. So we just accept the humiliation. Step between them. Keep your voices down, we're still being watched. Turned away, her hands clenched into fists. Wanted to comfort her, but he knew she needed time. They all did. That evening, back in their quarters on the orbital station where the summit was held, the three of them sat in silence. Through the window, they could see alien ships of every design imaginable. Some looked like animals, others like geometric shapes, a few any description at all. They think we're nothing, said quietly. The entire galaxy thinks we're children playing at being adults. Good, said both and looked at him. Good, repeated. How is any of this good? Stood and walked to the window. Because when they underestimate you, they don't prepare for you, they don't study you, they don't take precautions. He turned to face them. Every weapon shown at this summit is designed to destroy, to break things, to kill. That's all they understand. And the seed is different, asked. The seed doesn't destroy, said. It transforms, it rebuilds. It recreates everything it touches into something new. They measured it by their standards and found it weak. They never asked what our standards were. Stood up, understanding dawning on her face. You wanted them to dismiss it. I needed them to dismiss it, corrected. Because the moment they take us seriously is the moment they start asking the right questions. And if they ask the right questions, he looked back at the alien ships outside. They might realize that humanity's greatest strength was never our ability to destroy. It's our ability to change things, to remake them. That sounds very philosophical, said, but philosophy doesn't win wars. No, agreed, but understanding your enemy does. And right now, the entire galaxy has proven they don't understand us at all. They see weakness where we see strategy. They see a toy where we see transformation. Let them laugh now. His voice grew cold. They won't be laughing for long. The three of them stood in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the other delegates were celebrating their impressive weapons, confident in their power, secure in their superiority. None of them knew that they had just made a terrible mistake. They had underestimated Earth. In his case, packed carefully in foam, the seed waited patiently. It didn't need to be impressive. It didn't need to inspire fear. It only needed one thing, the chance to activate. And soon, very soon, it would get that chance. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about the difference between power and force, between destruction and transformation, between making war and remaking worlds. But that lesson would come later. For now, Earth's delegation could only wait and prepare. The mockery had been delivered. The insult had been made. And in the cold mathematics of cosmic politics, that meant the response was already inevitable. 6 months passed quickly, and returned to Earth and buried themselves in work. They built 7 more seeds, each one perfect, each one tested in secret. The mockery at the summit had hurt, but it had also given them something valuable: time. Time to prepare while the galaxy forgot about Earth's toy. Then the message came. Minu, chairman of Earth's Defense Council, stood before the emergency assembly with his face pale. Behind him, a holographic display showed the supremacy's official declaration. The words glowed in the air, translated into every human language simultaneously. The supremacy claims territorial sovereignty over the Sol system and its 3 colony worlds. Earth has 72 hours to acknowledge governance or face complete sterilization. This is not negotiable. Resistance will result in extinction. The council chamber erupted in shouting. Representatives from every nation on Earth and every colony demanded answers. How could this happen? Why Earth? What could they do? Sara, a young strategic analyst, stood and waited for quiet. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. They chose us because of the summit. They watched us get humiliated. They saw weakness. They're testing whether anyone will defend us. And will anyone defend us? Someone asked. Minu shook his head. I've contacted every allied civilization. They all expressed sympathy. None offered military support. So we're alone, another representative said. We've always been alone, said from his seat. The only question is what we do about it. Through the chamber windows, they could see the fleet approaching. 500 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, blotting out the stars. Humanity's entire military force consisted of 40 defensive ships. The math was simple and brutal. We could surrender, someone suggested quietly. No, Minu's voice was firm. I've reviewed history. They've conquered 12 civilizations in the past century. Every single population was either enslaved or eliminated. Surrender just means dying slowly instead of quickly. Had been sitting silently, but now he stood. There's another option. All eyes turned to him. The seed said, understanding immediately. You want to deploy it. 1 unit confirmed, as a field test. A field test, a council member laughed bitterly. Your prototype was rejected by the entire galaxy as useless. How is that supposed to stop 500 warships? Didn't answer directly. Instead, he walked to the holographic display and pulled up the seed's technical specifications. They think we're weak because they measure strength in firepower. They're not wrong that our weapons are inferior, but they're making one crucial mistake. Which is, Minu asked. They assume we think like they do. The council voted. It wasn't unanimous, but it passed. Had 48 hours before they began their attack. 48 hours to prove that Earth's rejected prototype was more than anyone imagined. Personally piloted the stealth shuttle. It was small, barely larger than a car, and it used technology that made it almost invisible to sensors. Almost, but not quite. She knew they would detect her eventually. That was part of the plan. The barren moon orbited at the edge of Earth's system. It had no name, just a number, Luna 7. Nothing lived there. Nothing had ever lived there. It was just rock and dust and emptiness. Perfect for what came next. Landed the shuttle on the moon's surface. Through her helmet, she could see Earth as a tiny blue dot in the distance. How many people were watching her right now? Millions. Billions. All of humanity held its breath while she carried a single sphere out of the shuttle. The seed felt heavy in her gloved hands, though it weighed less than 10 kilograms. Heavy with possibility, heavy with consequence. She placed it gently on the ground and activated the timer. 30 seconds, that's all she had. She ran back to the shuttle, engines already warming. 20 seconds. She strapped in and fired the thrusters. 15 seconds. The shuttle lifted off, dust swirling beneath it. 10 seconds. She cleared the surface. 5 seconds. She engaged the stealth systems. 0. From orbit, she watched the seed begin to glow. It was a soft light at first, like a lamp warming up. Then it grew brighter and brighter. The seed sank into the moon's surface like a stone into water, leaving a hole that immediately started to spread. Her radio crackled. Shuttle, this is Patrol 7. We detected your launch. Identify yourself. Didn't respond. She was already accelerating away, the shuttle's stealth systems masking her escape. Back on the flagship, High Commander reviewed the sensor data with amusement. His subordinates had tracked the human shuttle and recorded the deployment of something on the barren moon. What did they deploy? Asked. Analyzing now, Commander. A pause. It appears to be the device they presented at the summit, the prototype that was rejected. Laughter echoed through the bridge. The garden ornament, they've planted their toy on a dead moon. He activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Attention all ships. The humans have deployed their prototype. Sensors indicate it's the same useless device that embarrassed them 6 months ago. They appear to think it will frighten us. More laughter from the other ships. Maintain attack formation, ordered. In 48 hours, we demonstrate what real power looks like. But first, he smiled, his alien features twisting into something cruel. Let's destroy their toy. Show them the difference between human desperation and might. Target that moon. Fire when ready. Back on Earth, watched the same sensor feeds as the... He saw the energy signatures building on their warships. He saw the weapons charging. "They're going to destroy the moon," said beside him. "I know," replied calmly. "The seed will be destroyed with it." "Will it?" Minyu joined them at the observation screen. "If you're wrong about this..." "I'm not wrong," said. Then more quietly, "I can't be wrong, because if I am, we're all dead anyway." The dreadnought fired. The weapon was designed to shatter asteroids, to break apart enemy stations, to crack moons in half. It crossed the distance in seconds and struck Luna 7 with the force of 100 nuclear bombs. The explosion lit up the darkness like a new sun. Rock and dust flew in all directions. For 10 minutes, the blast cloud obscured everything. Sensors couldn't penetrate the debris. Visual observation was impossible. The celebrated, their channels filled with cheers and boasts. High Commander raised a toast to easy victories. Then the dust began to clear. A young communications officer named was the first to notice. She was working the night shift at Earth's Defense Headquarters, monitoring sensor data that most people ignored. Routine work, boring work, until it wasn't. "Sir," she said quietly, then louder, "Sir." Turned from his conversation with Minyu. "What is it?" "The moon," said, her voice shaking. "The mass readings, they're wrong." "Wrong how?" "They're increasing. The moon's mass is going up, not down." Impossible. They had just watched it explode. Rushed to her station and checked the readings himself. She was right. The moon that had been shattered by weapons was growing. Not in the empty space where it had been, but right there, reconstructing itself from the debris field. "Get me visual," ordered. The main screen shifted to show Luna 7. What they saw made everyone in the room fall silent. The moon was rebuilding itself, but it wasn't the same moon. The rock was turning silver, and from its surface structures were rising, tall spires, massive towers, arrays of something that looked like weapons but couldn't be weapons because they were too many, too large, too impossible. "What is that?" Minyu whispered. Smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't a happy smile. "That," he said, "is the seed doing what it was designed to do. It transforms everything it touches. Rock becomes machinery, dust becomes structure, destruction becomes..." He paused, watching the moon continue to change. "Becomes more seeds." Appeared on a video call, her face filled with awe and terror. "The replication rate is exceeding our projections by a factor of 10. "How many?" asked. "Current estimate," checked her readings. 12 million individual units and growing. Silence filled the room. 12 million, Minyu repeated. "You deployed one seed 6 hours ago. Now there are 12 million. "Exponential growth," explained. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. It doesn't add, it multiplies." On the screen, the silver moon gleamed, and from its surface, like locusts rising from a field, millions of small objects lifted into space. Each one was a perfect copy of the original seed, each one capable of doing exactly what the first one did. The swarm began to move. Toward the fleet. "They're going to retreat," predicted. "Too late," said softly. "They're already surrounded, they just don't know it yet." High Commander watched the silver swarm approach with confusion rather than fear. His tactical officer had counted 12 million objects, each about the size of the original sphere the humans had deployed. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out to surround the fleet from all directions. Analysis demanded. "They appear to be copies of the original device," his science officer reported. "Composition matches. Energy signatures are identical. Commander, they're not armed. No weapons systems detected." "Then what are they?" Nobody had an answer. "All ships open fire," ordered. "Destroy them." The fleet had weapons that could vaporize asteroids. They had missiles that could track targets across star systems. They had energy beams that could cut through the thickest armor. They unleashed all of it at once. Space lit up with destruction. Thousands of seeds were destroyed in the first volley, then thousands more. They were efficient, precise, and utterly ruthless. In 30 minutes, they had eliminated nearly 1 million of the silver spheres. Remaining count, asked. 17 million, Commander. His confident expression faltered. That's impossible. We destroyed 1 million. How are there more now than when we started? They're replicating, sir. Every piece of destroyed seed is being consumed by the others and rebuilt into new units. We're not reducing their numbers. We're feeding them raw materials. Stood from his command chair. He had fought in 40 battles across the galaxy. He had conquered civilizations and broken enemy fleets. He understood warfare. But this was something different. Retreat, he ordered. Full fleet maximum speed back to space. The 500 warships turned and engaged their faster-than-light engines. Space folded around them and they vanished from Earth's system. For a moment, there was silence. The remaining seeds floated in the empty space, their purpose unclear. Then they moved. All 17 million seeds activated their own travel systems. They weren't as fast as warships, but they didn't need to be. They had already calculated the destination. They followed. On Earth, the Defense Council watched it all happen through long-range sensors. They're chasing the fleet, Sora observed, all the way to space. Mean you turn to, can you stop them? Shook his head slowly. The seed has one function, complete its task. It was programmed to transform the moon. That task was interrupted by weapons fire. The seeds adapted. Now their task includes the source of the interruption. The themselves said quietly from her console. They became part of the environmental modification parameter when they attacked. You're saying those things are going to the, Minyu's voice rose. We can't allow that. This was supposed to be a defensive demonstration, not an invasion. It's not an invasion, corrected. It's a response. The seeds don't think, they don't hate, they don't want conquest, they just complete their programming. What happens when they reach space? Nobody answered, nobody knew. 3 days later, the swarm arrived. The Supremacy controlled 7 planets across 3 star systems. Their prime housed 12 billion citizens. It was beautiful, covered in purple oceans and golden continents. Massive cities reached toward the sky. Gardens and parks spread between the buildings. They were a proud species, ancient and cultured. They watched the silver swarm approach with growing fear. High Commander sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, to Earth, to anyone who would listen. We were wrong. We underestimated humanity. Please call off your weapon. We will leave your system. We will never threaten you again. Please. Earth's response was delivered by himself, broadcast across all channels. There is no recall function. The seed completes its mission. What is its mission? Begged. Provided the answer, her voice hollow. Total environmental adaptation and resource optimization. It doesn't stop until the entire system achieves its programmed state. What state? What does that mean? It means, said slowly, that your system will be transformed into something new, something useful, something different. The seeds reached Prime first. They didn't attack the ships that fired at them. They ignored the planetary defense systems. They simply descended through the atmosphere like silver rain. The first seeds landed in the ocean. For an hour, nothing seemed to happen. Scientists in submarines watched the spheres sink to the ocean floor and burrow into the sediment. Reports came in of similar landings across the planet, in the forests, in the deserts, in the cities themselves. Then the transformation began. A child was playing in a park when the ground beneath her feet started to change color. Stone turned silver. She ran, frightened, telling her parents. By the time they returned to look, the entire park was silver. The trees, the grass, the playground equipment, everything. And it was spreading. Hour by hour, the silver infection grew. It consumed soil and rock, water and air, plants and buildings. Everything it touched became more seeds, and those new seeds spread further, faster, transforming more and more. The military tried everything. They bombed affected areas with antimatter weapons. The explosions created massive craters, but the seeds in those craters simply consumed the debris and continued growing. They tried freezing entire regions to absolute zero. The seeds adapted and kept working. They tried biological weapons, chemical weapons, and weapons that didn't even have names. Nothing worked. On the second day, the first city fell. Its population evacuated to the countryside, but there was nowhere safe to go. The silver was everywhere now. It covered continents. It filled oceans. The purple water turned metallic, then silver, then began producing more seeds from the dissolved minerals. Watched the satellite feeds from Earth, his military training trying to find some tactical advantage that were missing. There wasn't one. This wasn't a battle, it was a process, like watching ice melt or fire spread, inevitable, unstoppable. How long, Minyu asked. Who had been brought in to consult, checked her calculations. At current replication rates, Prime will be completely transformed in 8 days. The other 6 planets, she paused. The seeds reached them 4 hours ago. Same pattern, same process. And when the transformation is complete? We don't know, admitted. The seed was designed for terraforming lifeless worlds. We programmed it to create Earth-like environments, but it was never tested on inhabited planets. The programming might recognize the as part of the environment to be adapted. You mean transformed, Sora said, like the rocks in water. Nodded reluctantly. By the 4th day, half of Prime was silver. The transformation had a terrible beauty to it. Massive structures rose from the converted ground, geometric and precise. They weren't buildings in any conventional sense. They were manufacturing centers, each one producing thousands of new seeds every minute. The planet itself was becoming a factory. The population tried to evacuate. Ships fled the system carrying millions of refugees, but the seeds had already spread to their other worlds. There was nowhere to run within their own territory. On the 5th day, High Commander sent his final transmission. He was aboard his flagship, the last functioning military vessel. Behind him, through the bridge windows, Prime gleamed silver in the light of its sun. People of Earth, said, and his voice was broken. We came to your system with arrogance. We threatened you with extinction. We mocked your prototype. He stopped, struggling with emotion. We were wrong, so terribly wrong. You tried to warn us. You told us the seed completes its task. We didn't understand. We thought ourselves superior. Now we watch our civilization die and we finally understand. Humanity doesn't make weapons to destroy. You make tools to create. And creation is far more terrifying than destruction when it cannot be stopped. He looked directly into the camera. I beg you, if any of my people survive this, please don't hold them responsible for my mistakes. We were fools, but we were living fools. Whatever we become after the seed is done. His voice cracked. We won't be anymore. We won't be anything anymore. The transmission cut off. Not because stopped sending, but because the seeds had reached his flagship. The silver swarm covered the hull in seconds, and the ship began to change. Metal became something else. Technology transformed into raw material. The flagship that had led 40 victorious campaigns dissolved into components, which became more seeds, which spread further into space. By the 7th day, all 7 planets gleamed silver. The oceans were gone. The forests were gone. The cities were gone. Everything was gone. In their place stood perfectly organized structures, geometric and alien, producing seeds in numbers too large to count. The transformation began affecting the asteroid belt, then the moons of the gas giants. The seeds were remaking the entire system, atom by atom, molecule by molecule. On the ninth day, construction began on something even larger. The seeds, working in perfect coordination, started building a sphere around the sun. A sphere designed to capture every bit of energy the star produced. It would take months to complete, but it had already started. And the 47 billion souls spread across 3 star systems. By the 10th day, they were gone. Not killed, not exactly. Their biological matter had been broken down to base components and repurposed. Their cities became raw materials. Their oceans became fuel. Their very bodies became parts of the great transformation machine that their system had become. The seed had done exactly what it was programmed to do. It had optimized the environment. It had adapted resources. It had transformed everything into a perfect, efficient system. Just not a system where could live. On Earth in the observation center, silence filled the room. They had watched it all, every day, every hour, the complete erasure of a civilization that had existed for thousands of years. Broke the silence with a sob. She had designed the seed to help humanity terraform dead worlds, to give them new homes among the stars. She had never imagined this. "Turn it off," she whispered. "Please turn it off." Entered the shutdown codes. Across 3 star systems, the seeds received the signal and ceased replicating. They didn't die or disappear. They simply stopped. The transformation was complete. The system had been optimized. And in the silence that followed, 47 billion ghosts seemed to whisper a question that nobody wanted to answer. Was this victory? Or was this something far worse? The emergency session of the Galactic Council happened 12 days after the seed reached space. Representatives from 47 civilizations gathered in the same hall where they had laughed at Earth's prototype 6 months earlier. Nobody was laughing now. Minyu stood before them as Earth's representative. He had been appointed after the transformation because he was a diplomat, someone who could navigate the political nightmare that humanity now faced. Behind him, massive screens showed live feeds of what remained of the supremacy. 3 star systems, 7 planets, all silver, all transformed into something that no longer resembled anything natural or living. The sphere around the sun was 40% complete, absorbing starlight and converting it into energy for systems that no one fully understood. Ambassador of the Empire spoke first. His voice, which had been so mocking at the summit, now shook with barely controlled fear. "What have you done?" "We defended ourselves," Minyu replied simply. Defended stood, his 4 arms gesturing wildly. "You erased an entire civilization, 47 billion lives, 3 complete star systems transformed into that," he pointed at the screens. "This isn't defense, this is extinction." Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Minyu waited for them to quiet before speaking again. "They threatened us with complete sterilization. Their exact words. They gave us 72 hours to surrender or die. They had done this before to 12 other civilizations. We studied their history. They don't accept surrender. They enslave or eliminate. Always." He paused. "What would you have had us do?" "Anything but this," another delegate shouted. "You could have negotiated. You could have asked for council mediation. You could have." "We did ask," Minyu interrupted. "I personally contacted every allied civilization. Every single one expressed sympathy and offered nothing else. They had 500 warships. We had 40. The math was clear. We were going to die unless we used the only option we had." The High Commander, his crystalline body refracting light across the chamber, spoke next. His voice was softer than but no less accusatory. "You told us the seed was for environmental modification. You presented it as a terraforming tool." "It is a terraforming tool," Minyu confirmed. "Terraforming is for dead worlds, not inhabited ones. The seed doesn't distinguish. It transforms any environment to optimal parameters. We programmed those parameters for dead worlds, yes. But when they attacked it, they became part of the environment it needed to optimize." On Earth, watched the council session through a live feed. He sat alone in his apartment, unable to sleep, barely eating. The weight of 47 billion deaths pressed on him like a physical thing. Had stopped coming to work 3 days ago. Had requested a transfer to Antarctica as far from people as possible. They were all running from what they had done. But knew he couldn't run. He had designed the seed. He had activated it. He had watched it work. He bore the responsibility whether he wanted it or not. His communication device chimed. It was Sora calling from the Defense Council building. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "The Council wants more information," she said. "They're asking questions we can't answer, about the seed's programming, about shutdown procedures, about whether it could happen again." "What do you want me to tell them?" "The truth." Sora looked away from the camera. "Can it happen again?" Considered lying. It would be easier, but Sora deserved honesty. "Yes, we have 6 more seeds in storage and the specifications to build more. The Galactic Council knows this. That's why they're scared." Back at the Council, the debate had turned into something uglier. Accusations flew. Some civilizations demanded that Earth be expelled from the galactic community. Others wanted sanctions. A few, mostly younger species that had suffered under aggression themselves, quietly supported Earth's actions. Then a new voice joined the conversation. It came from a species that rarely spoke at council meetings. They were an old race, one of the oldest in the galaxy. They had existed for 50,000 years and had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves. The elder, a being that looked like flowing water given form, addressed the assembly. "I wish to share something with this council, a historical record from our archives, dated approximately 30,000 years ago." The chamber fell silent. "At that time, my people faced a threat similar to what Earth recently faced. A militaristic empire threatened us with extinction. We were weaker, younger, not yet the civilization we are today. We had a choice: surrender and die slowly, or fight with the only weapon we had." The elder paused. "We chose to fight. We used a biological weapon that we had developed for terraforming purposes. It was designed to accelerate plant growth on barren worlds. We modified it, released it on the enemies. Within a month, their entire planet was covered in vegetation so dense that it suffocated their population. 2 billion lives ended because we transformed their world into a garden." The hall remained silent. "I tell you this," the elder continued, "because I want you to understand something. Every civilization in this council has faced this choice at some point. The choice between dying with honor or surviving with blood on their hands. We judge Earth harshly now because we remember making the same choice and we hate being reminded of it." Stood again, but his anger had cooled to something more contemplative. "Then what do you propose, elder? That we simply accept what Earth has done?" "I propose we recognize the truth. The seed is terrifying not because it's powerful, but because it reveals something we don't want to admit, that our concepts of warfare are primitive. We destroy things we fear. Humans transform them, which is worse. The civilization that cracks planets or the civilization that remakes them." Minu seized the moment. "The Galactic Council asked us to demonstrate our defensive capabilities. We did. You didn't like the demonstration because it made you uncomfortable. But the supremacy threatened us with extinction, and now they are extinct instead. We will not apologize for surviving." "And the other seeds?" the commander asked. "What guarantee do we have that you won't use them again?" "The same guarantee you give us that you won't crack our planet with your weapons," Minu replied. "Mutual deterrence. We won't use the seeds unless we're threatened with extinction again. And now that you know what the seeds can do, I suspect no one will threaten us with extinction." The council session lasted 14 more hours. Arguments continued. Threats were made and retracted. Alliances shifted. In the end, no formal decision was reached. No sanctions were imposed. No expulsion was declared. The council simply moved on, because what else could they do? Earth had revealed that the youngest species in the galaxy possessed the most terrifying weapon any of them had ever seen. Not because it killed quickly, but because it killed completely. Not because it destroyed, but because it transformed. Because it turned entire civilizations into raw materials for something else. That night published her final report on the transformation. It was a scientific document, clinical and precise. It detailed exactly what had happened to the population during the seed's optimization process. The report confirmed what everyone had feared. They hadn't died all at once. The transformation had taken days. The seeds broke down biological matter slowly, efficiently, preserving consciousness as long as possible because living organisms processed energy more efficiently than dead ones. They had been aware during their transformation, aware and unable to stop it. When the report became public, protests erupted on Earth. Millions of people took to the streets demanding that the remaining seeds be destroyed. They didn't want to be protected by something so monstrous. They didn't want to be the species that erased civilizations. But just as many people supported the decision, they had survived. Humanity still existed. That was what mattered. Watched the protests from his window. He understood both sides. He had designed the seed with good intentions. It was supposed to help humanity spread among the stars, to give them new worlds where they could thrive. Instead, it had become the most feared weapon in the galaxy. Called him late that night. She looked terrible, her face pale and thin. "I can't sleep," she said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them. Though I hear their final transmissions, that commander begging us to stop, and we couldn't stop it. We had no way to stop it." "I know," said quietly. "Was it worth it? All those lives, all that suffering, all that horror. Was it worth it just so we could survive?" Thought about the question. He had been thinking about it for days. "I don't know. Maybe survival isn't supposed to be worth it. Maybe it just is. We had a choice, them or us. We chose us. I can live with that choice, but I can't pretend it was noble or heroic. It was just necessary. The galaxy will never forget what we did." "Good," said. "Fear is a better teacher than kindness. The galaxy mocked us when we were weak. They dismissed us when we offered our technology peacefully. They ignored us when we asked for help. Now they know that humanity can do more than survive. We can transform entire worlds. We can remake reality itself. Let them remember that. Let them fear that." Was quiet for a long moment. "You've changed. The person I knew 6 months ago wouldn't have said that. The person you knew 6 months ago hadn't killed 47 billion people." He looked at his reflection in the dark window. "None of us are who we were. We can't be. Not after this." They talked for hours, sharing their guilt and their justifications, their horror and their relief. When they finally said goodbye, felt marginally better. Not forgiven, not redeemed, just less alone. The systems remained silver and silent. The sphere continued its construction, and on Earth, 6 seeds waited in cold storage, ready to be deployed again if necessary. The galaxy had learned its lesson, but the cost of that lesson would haunt humanity forever. 3 months after the transformation, the Galactic Council convened again. The atmosphere was different now. The casual arrogance that had defined the previous summit was gone, replaced by careful politeness and measured words. Representatives who had once joked and socialized now kept their distance from each other, especially from Earth's delegation. Walked through the hall wearing formal diplomatic attire. He was Earth's new chief ambassador, appointed despite his protests. Minyu had insisted. "The galaxy needs to see the person who created the seed," he had said. "They need to know exactly who they're dealing with." The transformed systems were visible on screens throughout the hall. 3 perfect star systems, reorganized for maximum efficiency. The sphere was now 70% complete. The planets themselves had been restructured into perfect geometric shapes, covered in machinery that served purposes humanity was still trying to understand. It was beautiful in an alien, terrifying way. And it was empty, not a single remained. The first item on the agenda was a proposal from the Empire. Ambassador stood to present it, but his demeanor had changed completely. The proud, mocking creature who had laughed at Earth's prototype now spoke with careful respect. Honored delegates, began, the Empire wishes to propose a formal alliance with Earth, not a treaty of convenience but a full military and economic partnership. Surprised murmurs filled the hall. Other civilizations looked shocked. Some looked offended. The Empire is the third most powerful military force in the galaxy, someone pointed out. Why would you seek alliance with a species you considered weak just months ago? His response was blunt. Because I was wrong. We were all wrong. We measured Earth by our standards, firepower, fleet size, destructive capability. We failed to understand that humanity operates on a completely different level. They don't destroy their enemies. They transform them. They don't conquer territory. They remake it from the atomic level up. This isn't weakness pretending to be strength. This is an entirely new kind of power. He turned to face directly. We laughed at the seed. We called it a toy, a garden ornament. We humiliated Earth in front of the entire galactic community. They made the same mistake, but they went further. They threatened Earth with extinction. And now they are extinct. I learn from examples. I choose to be Earth's ally rather than its next lesson. The honesty was startling. Several delegates began speaking at once, arguing about the proposal. Some supported it, others called it cowardice. The debate raged for hours. During a break, Minyu joined in a private observation room. Through the window, they could see alien ships of every design, but none approached too close to Earth's delegation ship. They're afraid of us, Minyu observed. Yes, agreed. Is that what we wanted? I don't know what we wanted anymore. We wanted to survive. We did. Everything else is just consequences. Appeared at the door looking nervous. Sirs, there's been a development. The collective wishes to make a formal apology. When the session resumed, the High Commander stood before the assembly. His crystalline body seemed less bright than before, as if dimmed by shame. People of Earth, he began, at the Defense Summit 6 months ago I dismissed your prototype as proof of your naivety. I suggested you didn't understand warfare at galactic scales. I was speaking from ignorance and arrogance. You understood warfare better than any of us. You just chose to wage it differently. He paused. The collective formally apologizes and requests to open technology exchange programs with Earth. We wish to learn from you. More proposals followed. 3 other civilizations requested help terraforming their dying colony worlds, offering massive payments. 7 civilizations requested formal alliance treaties. Even species that had never acknowledged humanity's existence before were now sending diplomatic messages. The political landscape of the galaxy had shifted overnight. Earth, the youngest and supposedly weakest member of the galactic community, had become one of its most influential powers, not through conquest, not through trade, but through fear. During another break, found standing alone, looking at the systems on a display screen. The Council is going to vote on something, said quietly. They want to make Earth a permanent member of the Supreme Security Committee. Which means? It means we'll have veto power over any galactic military action. It means we'll be one of the 5 civilizations that effectively controls Council policy. It means we've gone from being the youngest species to being one of the rulers in 6 months. Laughed bitterly. We showed them a terraforming tool and they're making us galactic overlords. The irony is perfect. Are you going to accept? Do we have a choice? If we refuse, they'll think we're planning something. If we accept, we become part of the system that oppressed us. Either way, we can't go back to being the naive newcomers they thought we were. The vote happened the next day. 46 civilizations voted yes. 1 abstained, Earth itself. Minyu had abstained out of respect for the democratic process, but the result was the same. Earth was now part of the galactic power structure. As the session concluded, gave a closing statement. He had written it the night before, unable to sleep, struggling to find words that captured everything he felt. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying across the silent hall. 3 months ago, the Supremacy threatened Earth with complete sterilization. They had done this before to 12 other civilizations. They were confident in their power, certain of their superiority. They saw Earth as weak, and they treated us accordingly. He gestured to the screens showing the transformed systems. This is the result, not because we wanted war, not because we sought empire, but because we chose to survive. The seed was designed to help humanity terraform lifeless worlds, to give us new homes among the stars. That it became a weapon was never our intention, but when faced with extinction, we used the only tool we had. Let this serve as a lesson to all civilizations present. Earth does not seek conflict. We do not desire conquest, but we will not be threatened, we will not be mocked, and we will not be subjugated. We are builders by nature. We remake dead worlds into living ones. We transform barren rock into gardens. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. But the same process that builds gardens can erase civilizations. The same hands that terraform planets can them. Remember this. The hall remained silent as concluded. The galaxy has learned that humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our fleets. It is our ability to reshape reality itself. We move beyond your concept of warfare because we don't think in terms of destruction and creation. We think in terms of transformation. Everything can be remade. Everything can be changed. Even civilizations. He looked directly at the assembled delegates. Fear is a better teacher than kindness. You didn't listen when we offered our technology peacefully. You didn't help when we asked for assistance. But you're listening now. You're paying attention now. And you will remember this moment for as long as your civilizations exist. The day you learned that humanity doesn't just survive, we transform. The session ended in silence. As the delegates departed, noticed that many avoided eye contact. Some whispered to each other. A few looked at him with expressions he couldn't quite identify. Was it respect? Fear? Horror? Probably all three. A week later, returned to Earth. He didn't go to the Defense Council building or his apartment in the city. Instead, he traveled to a remote facility in the northern mountains where humanity had built a memorial. The site stood on a cliff overlooking a valley. It was a simple structure, a circular platform with a single monument at its center. On that monument were engraved 47 billion names, every who had died in the transformation. It had taken 3 months to compile the list and weeks to engrave every name. The monument was 300 meters wide and covered in tiny script. Was already there when arrived. She stood at the edge looking at the names. She looked thinner than before, older somehow, though only months had passed. "I come here every day," she said without turning around. "I read the names. I try to remember that they were people, that they had lives and families and dreams." "Does it help?" "No, but I do it anyway." Joined her at the monument. Together they read names in a language neither of them spoke, of people they had never met, from a civilization that no longer existed. "The first colonists are arriving at the transformed worlds next month," said. "Humans are going to live there, in the systems we created by erasing the—" "I know, I'm not going to be one of them. I can't. How could anyone live there knowing what it cost?" "Easily," said quietly. "People are good at forgetting when it's convenient. In a few generations, no one will remember the except as a footnote in history. The memorial will still be here, but no one will visit it. The names will fade and eventually become unreadable. And humanity will live in those 3 perfect star systems and think they earned them through cleverness rather than horror." They stood in silence, reading names, finally spoke again. "Was it worth it, all those lives, all that suffering? Was our survival worth 47 billion deaths?" Had been asked this question before. He had avoided answering honestly. But here, standing among the names of the dead, he felt he owed the truth. "I don't know if it was worth it," he said, But I know we made a choice. They wanted to kill every human. We wanted to survive. Their extinction or ours. I chose ours. I would choose it again. That doesn't make it right or noble or good. It just makes it our choice. And what happens when the next civilization forgets this lesson? When someone else threatens us because they think enough time has passed? Looked at the distant mountains. Then we teach the lesson again. The seed is still in storage, 6 units waiting, and the knowledge to build more if needed. The galaxy knows this. They know we have the capability. That's why they made us part of the Supreme Security Committee. That's why civilizations that once ignored us now seek our alliance. Not because they respect us, because they fear us. Fear isn't the same as respect. No, but it's more reliable. Respect can fade, fear endures. A shuttle arrived carrying Minu, and they had come to discuss the first colonization plans, policy decisions that needed to be made, resources to be allocated, the practical details of transforming humanity's greatest horror into their greatest opportunity. But first, they stood together at the memorial. 4 people who had changed the course of galactic history. 4 people who would carry the weight of 47 billion deaths for the rest of their lives. I've been thinking, Minu said, breaking the silence, about what we tell future generations, about how we frame this in the history books. The truth, said immediately. Which truth? That we were victims who defended ourselves, or that we became monsters to survive? Both, replied, because both are true. We were threatened with extinction and we responded with transformation. We didn't want this. We didn't seek it. But when faced with the choice between dying as innocents or surviving as killers, we chose survival. That's the truth, all of it. As the sun set over the memorial, casting long shadows across the 47 billion names, the 4 of them made a silent promise. They would never forget. They would never let humanity forget. The seed would remain locked away, used only as a last resort, and the memorial would stand as a reminder of the terrible cost of transformation. But deep in the mountains, in cold storage, 6 seeds waited. 6 perfect spheres that could remake worlds or erase civilizations. 6 tools that had transformed humanity from the galaxy's youngest species into one of its most feared powers. The galaxy had learned its lesson. They would not mock Earth again. They would not dismiss humanity as weak or naive. They would remember the transformation, and they would remember what happened when someone underestimated the species that treated reshaping entire worlds as basic infrastructure. Fear, as had said, was a better teacher than kindness, and the galaxy had learned its lesson well. High above Earth in the Galactic Council chambers, a new plaque had been installed. It was placed where every delegate would see it when entering the main hall. The inscription was simple, written in every galactic language. In memory of the supremacy, lost to transformation, may their fate remind us all, never mistake patience for weakness, and never underestimate a species that builds gardens in the ashes of empires. Beneath it in smaller text, they mocked Earth's weak prototype. The prototype did not mock them back. It simply completed its task.